What's going on, guys? B Scott here with you, and on today's show, we got your wide receiver sit starts. Every single matchup, all the wide receivers that you could ask for. I got them start them, sit them, stream them, whatever you like. So keep it locked and loaded right here at the first four downs. What's going on, guys, and welcome back. As I mentioned in the preview, we're going over the wide receiver sit starts. We're going to look at every single matchup and talk about all the wide receivers. And if I miss a wide receiver, or there's a receiver you want to hear about, just drop in the comment section. I'll be glad to get back to you. And before we get started, don't forget, like the video, subscribe, share, thumb bell, all that good stuff. Drop it in the comment section if you have a question about any wide receiver, any sit, start, flex, whatever you want to talk about, any position. I'll have all the timestamps in the description. And then obviously I got all your sit starts for any position you're looking for. It's on the channel. You'll be able to find it easy. So let's dive right into it. First matchup we're going to be looking at, Jacksonville Jaguars on the road against Cincinnati Bengals. You're starting Ja'Marr Chase in this matchup, plain and simple. Jacksonville Jaguars give up 12th most fantasy points to wide receivers, giving up 4th most receiving yards, and Ja'Marr Chase, 4 touchdowns in 3 games. He's looking good to me, and the Jacksonville Jaguars have been eaten up by deep ball receivers. You saw week 1 with Brandon Cooks. You've seen him with Courtland Sutton. So obviously, Ja'Marr Chase must start wide receiver this week. Should have a big day. T. Higgins already ruled out of this matchup, so he's going to be sitting. And then obviously Tyler Boyd, if you want to get in on that action, he did catch a touchdown, bounced off a defender, made it in the end zone, so you could see some targets there for Tyler Boyd as well. So obviously you're starting Ja'Marr Chase, and then Tyler Boyd is a possible flex type guy. On the flip side, Marvin Jones, the only receiver I can really trust. He's getting the most targets. DJ Chark, really boomer bust, so if you want to throw him in the lineup, I could see him possibly getting a touchdown here. No Jesse Bates in that secondary for the Bengals. That hurts them. So obviously, I like Marvin Jones going forward. He's just the biggest target booster. He gets the most targets and yards. So Marvin Jones is a start for me in this matchup. DJ Chark is on the boomer bust. And that's the wide receivers for this matchup. Tennessee Titans on the road against the New York Jets. No real healthy pass catchers for Tennessee Titans at the moment. A.J. Brown, they're saying, is week to week. Julio Jones also dealing with a hamstring injury. Missed practice today. We'll have to wait later on in the week. If Julio Jones is a go, you're obviously starting him. If Jones and Brown were both to miss the game, a guy named Nick Westbrook, I'm not even going to try and pronounce the third name, the hyphenated name. It's okay. Nick Westbrook caught a touchdown, seen the largest target share for the wide receivers over there when A.J. Brown was out. So he's a guy to mention that could be a flyer here against the New York Jets secondary that's not very good. On the flip side, New York Jets. Corey Davis in the revenge game. Had 10 targets this last week. I like him here once again. Elijah Moore dealing with a concussion. He's more than likely out. It's looking like you might get Jamison Crowder back this week. Limited practice today, so we'll have to wait and see on that one. But I like Corey Davis as a possible option this week. Going against his old team, Tennessee Titans, didn't want to give him a contract. So Corey Davis against Tennessee Titans, I'm starting. On the flip side, if Julio Jones is healthy, you're starting him. A.J. Brown, more than likely not playing. And then Nick Westbrook is a flyer type option if both these receivers are out. Kansas City on the road against Philadelphia Eagles. You got to start Tyreek Hill. You got to live or die by him. It is what it is. He's killed me for 2 straight weeks. In a couple of my leagues, it's okay. I get it. They've really taken away the top on him. But you got to be starting him, firing him up here. Even going against Darius Slay, possibly. He'll be able to beat Darius Slay in man-to-man coverage either way, so they're probably going to have to double him. But you're starting him in a plus matchup. You've seen Dallas just carve him up. You're starting Tyreek Hill. On the flip side, Devontae Smith. Possible flex type guy. Obviously, Kansas City giving up the 9th most fantasy points to wide receivers. A favorable matchup in a potential shootout here. So Devontae Smith is a flex type guy. Yeah, he fell down on a route. Trevon Diggs pick 6, so not good. But Devontae Smith, you're probably starting him here. And then also Jalen Reagor. This guy I really like, but he's just not being targeted downfield enough. And getting a decent amount of volume, led the team in targets against the Dallas Cowboys. But I'm not really knowing if I could start him this week. He just hasn't put it together as a possible fantasy viable option just yet. Carolina Panthers on the road against the Dallas Cowboys. You're starting DJ Moore, plain and simple. Coming off a great week. He's been elite through the first 3 weeks. You got to start him. More than likely going to see a lot of Trevon Diggs, who's played very, very well so far. But you're starting DJ Moore. It's, at this point, set it and forget it. He's looked great. I don't really know if I could trust Terrace Marshall or Robbie Anderson at all in this matchup. I could see a decent amount of volume here for those receivers, but we'll just have to wait and see. No Christian McCaffrey. I can't trust anybody else to pass catch outside of DJ Moore in this matchup for the Carolina Panthers. On the flip side, CeeDee Lamb. On a weekly basis, you're going to be firing him up. You drafted him as probably your wide receiver 2, maybe your wide receiver 3 if you were lucky enough, and you're firing him up here. Led the team in receiving yards, 3 for 66. Not a huge workload there considering they ran the ball effectively, but facing a tough Carolina defense. You went up 7th fewest fantasy points to wide receivers, and so you're going to be firing up CeeDee Lamb here. Same thing with Amari Cooper. Had back-to-back down weeks. dealing with a little bit of a rib injury. This is a good spot, a good get-right game. Hopefully they can keep Dak upright against this good pass rush of the Carolina defense. And I think the Dallas Cowboys are going to be able to beat it. And I like Amari Cooper. I like CeeDee Lamb in this matchup. New York Giants on the road against the New Orleans Saints. Marquez Callaway, maybe. That's about all I got for any pass catcher in this game. Sterling Shepard dealing with injury. So is Darius Slayton. Kenny Golladay hasn't put together a good week. And I think going against Marshawn Lattimore, it's going to be tough. It's going to take a big play for Kenny Golladay, which they don't seem to just throw him the touchdown jump balls at all. So I don't really like any pass catcher on the Giants this week. And then on the flip side, New Orleans Saints, like I said, with Marquez Callaway, maybe you start him. You've seen him. He got a touchdown. He's starting to get targeted a little more. Maybe they can work on a rapport there. I think Giants secondary is still pretty good, but obviously giving up a lot to wide receiver one. So if you got to start Callaway, I get it. Take a flyer on him. Outside of that, there's not many pass catchers I like in this matchup. Cleveland Browns on the road against the Minnesota Vikings. You're starting Odell Beckham Jr. Looked great last week. And on top of that, Minnesota Vikings giving up third most fantasy points to wide receivers, 6 touchdowns, fifth most receiving yards. So obviously you're starting OBJ here in a potential shootout. Could possibly happen. Looks good. And hopefully he'll be ready for another full complement of snaps against the Vikings defense that really has struggled over the first few weeks. On the flip side, Minnesota Vikings. There's 2 receivers you can trust on a weekly basis. Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen. That's it. KJ Osborne. Yes, he had strung together a couple good weeks. But I don't know if it's going to happen here against the Cleveland defense that's pretty darn good, to be honest. And that pass rush is getting there. You saw 9 sacks last week against Justin Fields. I think they'll be able to keep Kirk Cousins upright, but I don't really know if I could start KJ Osborne here. I like Justin Jefferson, and I like Adam Thielen. That's it. Detroit Lions on the road against Chicago Bears. Who's quarterbacking for the Chicago Bears? Is it going to be Justin Fields? Is it Nick Foles? I mean, do I need to suit up and get out there? I don't know. At this point, somebody has to do it. And going against the Detroit Lions defense, that's not very good, in my opinion. Plain and simple. You see it. They actually played pretty well against Baltimore last week, but a couple big plays really dropped by Hollywood Brown. Really could have blew that game open for Baltimore. So I don't really believe they played as good as advertised. But either way, for the pass catchers, Allen Robinson, you got to start him here. It's a good spot to start him. I think it starts with the run game here for Chicago to get right. Run with David Montgomery. Allen Robinson, target him heavily. He should be targeted. He's your best receiver by far. Plain and simple. They don't really have anybody to guard him. So Allen Robinson, you're starting him here in this matchup. I would if I owned him. And then on the flip side, Quintus Cephas. Albeit it was shut down last week. Jimmy Smith was on the field. Quintus Cephas, the outside receiver. I like him in the matchup against the Chicago Bears, but I don't know necessarily if I could trust him. He only had 1 target last week. You saw Khalif Raymond. I don't know who that is either. Got 10 targets. So obviously I can't really trust any wide receiver for the Lions. But Quintus Cephas, I think sneakily he could have a decent day here against the Chicago Bears secondary that's not very good. They have been getting after the quarterback, so you gotta worry about that with Jared Goff. But yeah, I'm not trusting a wide receiver necessarily for Detroit. I got a feeling Quintus Cephas might make a play, but then obviously you're starting Allen Robinson. That's the one wide receiver you can trust in this matchup. Houston Texans on the road against Buffalo Bills. Brandon Cooks, you're probably starting him here. Not a good spot. Buffalo Bills give up the fewest fantasy points to wide receivers on the season. And Brandon Cooks is pure volume play. Plain and simple, 32 targets through the first 3 weeks. 2 games with 100 yards. Has a game with a touchdown. So it's a pure volume play if you're starting Brandon Cooks. I think you got to move him down this week. Obviously, he did pretty well even last week against a tough Carolina defense. So I'm probably still starting Brandon Cooks here. But you got to worry. They're a 17-point underdog here. Not a good spot for Brandon Cooks. But if you got to play him, I understand. On the flip side, Stephon Diggs has not looked himself in the first 3 weeks. Hopefully they get it going. DJ Moore, you saw what happened last week against this Texans defense. Had a great day, 8 for 126. So I think Diggs could have the biggest day here of any of the receivers. Cole Beasley, Emmanuel Sanders. These are guys that I think you could plug and play. Cole Beasley coming off 11 receptions last week. And Emmanuel Sanders with 2 touchdowns. But the Buffalo Bills might get out to an early lead. And who knows if they even need to throw the ball, to be honest. By the second half, you could see these starters being pulled. So if they get it early, that's great. I could trust Stephon Diggs, Cole Beasley, Emmanuel Sanders. These are flex-type guys, no problem. And then on the Houston side, Brandon Cooks, that's it. Indianapolis Colts on the road against Miami Dolphins. I like Michael Pittman in this matchup, plain and simple. 12 targets back-to-back weeks. It's pure volume play. I think Carson Wentz has to get it going. I know the offensive line is hurt. Quentin Nelson's going to be out of this game. Got the high ankle sprain. But Pittman Jr. is getting enough targets to warrant wide receiver 3 flex-type starts every single week. Albeit, he is facing Xavier Howard, Byron Jones. Decent secondary of the Miami Dolphins, plain and simple. They're good. But you got to probably be firing him here just based on pure volume in that passing game. On the flip side, Jalen Waddle, 12 catches last week, 58 scoreless yards. Not a lot. Most catches with the fewest yards by a wide receiver in history. Pretty crazy. So I like Jalen Waddle for pure volume, plain and simple. If Will Fuller is healthy, dealing with an injury, missed practice today on Wednesday, if he's healthy, I'd fire him up here too. The Indianapolis Colts give up the 5th most fantasy points to wide receivers, and the most touchdowns is 7. So Will Fuller, a possible start for me this week. And I like Jalen Waddle based on the volume. I get it. Jacoby Brissett's under center. That kind of limits the big playability. But I like both these guys as options here in week 4. Washington football team on the road against the Atlanta Falcons. Pretty plain and simple. You're starting Terry McLaurin. You're starting Calvin Ridley. That's about it. These are 2 stud receivers going against 2 secondaries that have struggled throughout the season. Washington football team, I don't know what happened to their defense, but it's not looking pretty. I think they can get it back, though. They can get that pass rush really going. At the front line, they're going to be able to make some plays in that secondary. So Calvin Ridley, Terry McLaurin, these are the 2 pass catchers on either side of the ball that you can trust, and that's about it in this matchup. Seattle Seahawks on the road against San Francisco 49ers. You're firing up DK Metcalf on a weekly basis, no matter what, no matter the matchup. Unless it's against Jalen Ramsey. He just hasn't been able to beat him in recent history, plain and simple. So, but you're starting DK Metcalf on a weekly basis. Tyler Lockett went out with the injury. We'll have to wait and see through the week with practice if he's healthy. If he is, he's a go for sure. Hands down, you're starting him. On the flip side, Deebo Samuel still led the team in targets last week with 10. Just missed a touchdown, but you're going to be starting him here too against Seattle secondary that hasn't played up to par over the last few weeks. You saw what Kirk Cousins did, kind of carved him up last week. Really, the whole defense just let him down on the road in Minnesota. So I like Deebo Samuel here. And then Brandon Ayuk. This is a guy that I guess you can move up into your flex spot, to be honest. Right now, caught a touchdown last week. His snaps are increasing. He's playing more. This is a division rival matchup. And the secondary for Seattle has not looked great so far. So Brandon Ayuk, I'm okay with you flexing him if you got to. Potential here for some points, plain and simple. So Deebo, Brandon Ayuk, Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, those are the pass catchers I like. Arizona Cardinals on the road against the Los Angeles Rams. DeAndre Hopkins, if he's playing, you probably got to fire him up here. Not a great spot. Hasn't had a 100-yard game this season yet. Does have touchdowns in week 1 and 2, but nothing in week 3. Dealing with the rib injury, but he'll probably more than likely be playing. You got to start him if you got him, plain and simple. And then also, Christian Kirk has looked good through the first 3 weeks. Looking like he's not that fluky flyer type guy. Had 100 yards receiving just last week. Week before that, had an okay day. And then week 1, you saw his potential. 2 touchdowns on deep plays. So obviously Christian Kirk is a guy that I would probably be flexing here in a division matchup where I think Arizona's going to have to throw the ball. They're not going to be able to run effectively against that front of the Rams, plain and simple. So these are the 2 guys I like on this side of the ball. AJ Green has strung together a couple good games, but if DeAndre Hopkins is healthy, I think AJ Green kind of loses that value on the outside. I don't know if he can beat the coverage against a great Rams coverage, to be honest. So Christian Kirk coming out the slot, I like him over the middle. And then DeAndre Hopkins. Rondale Moore I do like, but he's a boomer bust player at this moment until we can see some consistency. Los Angeles Rams. You're starting Cooper Kupp, plain and simple. He's the 1 receiver in the league. Number 1, leading the league in receiving yards, 5 touchdowns. Been great. Robert Woods hasn't necessarily put it together and had a great week through 3 weeks, but I like him here in a matchup, a get-right game against an Arizona Cardinals secondary that hasn't been that great. So for me, Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, you're firing these guys up. You saw Deshaun Jackson with those big plays, the big playability. I don't know if I can trust that on a weekly basis, obviously. And then same thing with Van Jefferson. It was Van Jefferson week 1. Now you see Deshaun Jackson week 3. Of the pass catchers in this matchup, it's plain and simple. Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, Christian Kirk, possible flex type option, and DeAndre Hopkins, that's it. Pittsburgh Steelers on the road against Green Bay Packers. You're starting Davante Adams every week. Set and forget it. It doesn't matter. On the flip side, Chase Claypool. Juju Smith-Schuster dealing with an injury. More than likely going to miss the time. They said he was day-to-day, but he missed practice on Wednesday. I like Chase Claypool, and I like Deontay Johnson in this matchup as potential low-end wide receiver 3 flex-type options. And you've seen Claypool with the absence of Deontay Johnson and Juju Smith-Schuster. He can catch a decent amount of balls, plain and simple. 8 or 9 receptions last week for 96 yards, something like that. A good day. So I like Claypool, and if Johnson's healthy, I like him in this matchup. Baltimore Ravens on the road against the Denver Broncos. Marquise Brown. You got to probably start him here, but it's tough. You saw he dropped a bunch of touchdowns last week. He's a better player than that. So he had a bad day, plain and simple. You can pretty much scratch it off as a case of the drops. I don't know. So if you got to start a receiver and you got to start Marquise Brown, I understand. He's looked good for the first 3 weeks. Even though he missed those catches, he still was getting separated on those plays, plain and simple. So he's a start for me against the Denver secondary, that albeit that's been good. I'm going to say 8 fewest fantasy points to wide receivers. So not a great spot for Marquise Brown here, but they're going to have to throw the ball to somebody. The running back room, it's not looking pretty. They didn't run the ball effectively last week. They're playing the Denver Broncos, who are pretty good against running backs, so I like Marquise Brown as a possible start if you got to. On the flip side, Denver Broncos, I like Tim Patrick is my favorite receiver this week. Jimmy Smith, I think you'll probably see him on Courtland Sutton. He's back and healthy. So Courtland Sutton, obviously, you're probably starting him here as a low-end option. This game's got a low over-under. Lots of defense to be had in this matchup. So Courtland Sutton, obviously, you're probably starting him here. And then I like Tim Patrick as a sneaky flex-type option. 5 catches for 98 yards, led the team in receiving last week. A guy that caught 2 touchdowns in the first 2 weeks. So I like Tim Patrick, sneaky flex play this week. Tampa Bay Bucks on the road against New England Patriots. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Antonio Brown. You're firing these guys up, whether you like it or not, on a weekly basis. Plain and simple. Playing a New England secondary that's actually really, really good against pass catchers, but they haven't really played anybody. Played the Saints, and their offense is kind of abysmal, a mess. They played the Jets, okay, and the Miami Dolphins. So obviously they haven't really faced the receiving core this strong as Mike Evans, Antonio Brown, Chris Godwin. I'm firing all 3 of these receivers, whether it be flex, your wide receiver 2, whatever. You're starting all 3 of them in Brady's homecoming. So obviously, Mac Jones on the other side of the ball didn't look pretty through 3 interceptions. But the Bucks have given up the most fantasy points to wide receivers by far, the most touchdowns, second most yards, the most receptions. So it's like you got to start receivers here. On the flip side, these are flyer-type guys that you could be taking for the New England Patriots. So whether it be Kendrick Bourne, whether it be Nelson Aguilar or Jacoby Myers, take your pick. I think one of these guys is going to hit. I like Jacoby Myers for the pure volume. I think they're going to have to throw the ball in this one to try and somewhat keep up. I don't think they're going to be able to slow down Tampa Bay. So, I mean, obviously, Bill Belichick has prepared for Tom Brady for 20 years. He's played with him, so he'll know what's going on. But still, I don't think they're going to be able to hang with the Bucs in this game. They're going to have to throw the ball a lot. Nelson Aguilar and Jacoby Myers, these are my 2 wide receivers I like in this matchup. Just possible flyer-type options in deeper leagues if you got to take a shot. And lastly, we got the Las Vegas Raiders on the road against Los Angeles Chargers. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, you're starting him. Mike Williams has played great. Outstanding. You saw 2 touchdowns last week against Kansas City Chiefs. He's looked the part. Everything we've expected through the first 3 or 4 years of his career. So obviously, maybe he can get a contract now since they haven't given him one up to this point. But anyway, you're starting Mike Williams. You're starting Keenan Allen. On the flip side, the Las Vegas Raiders. I like Ruggs. I like Bryan Edwards. I like Hunter Renfrow. Which one is it going to be? I'll tell you right now, the Chargers secondary is no joke. It's legit. It's fast. They make a lot of plays. They don't give up a ton of big plays. So I don't really like Ruggs in this matchup. Hunter Renfrow, based on pure volume, maybe second on the team in target share. So maybe you take a shot with him. I think one of these receivers will get a touchdown. I'm guessing it's going to be Bryan Edwards. If you got to take a shot, I like Bryan Edwards. I think the Raiders are going to be able to move the ball here against a division rival. Obviously, they need to run the ball first. Chargers give up the most rushing yards on the ground. So the running backs I like in this matchup. But for receivers, there's not one I really love. So if I got to start one, I'm going to say it's Renfrow or Bryan Edwards. I think they'll be able to take Ruggs away from over the top. So anyway, that's all the wide receiver matchups from every single start of week 4 of the NFL. So if you got a wide receiver or a question about anyone, drop in the comment section. I'll be glad to get back to you. And once again, like the video, subscribe, share, thumb, bell, all that good stuff. And then comment if you got any questions at all, just drop in the comment section. So for the first 4 downs, it's been B. Scott, and I'm out.